And I want to dive a little bit into principle, which is Leonard Peikoff's, but I'll do a little stealing if that's okay. So, what do we mean by an American sense of life? What sort of constellation of attitudes does she have in mind? First of all, she says, Americans see themselves as independent entities. We see ourselves as being independent, whereas a European, by contrast, would more readily see himself as belonging to the state. Americans, she say, don't allow themselves to be pushed around, maybe the way Europeans do. Does that seem to ring true? And again, you can think 1971 versus today. What sort of state are we in today? Second, she says that money earned by someone's own personal effort is admired in America, whereas in Europe, it's sort of the old money or the money that's in the church or in royalty that's respected. But in the United States, we respect achievement. We respect money earned by one's own personal effort. What did you say? The self-made man, yes. We respect that here in America. We also have respect for our public figures, but in America, it's a respect sort of among equals. And in a way, you know, a lot of people criticize Trump for tweeting, and I criticize the content of Trump's tweets all the time. But one thing that I've said that is actually a good thing about Trump tweeting is that he's publicly accessible, right? So I feel like I can go out there and answer Trump in the morning with my coffee and get mad, or mostly mad. Sorry, guys. Okay. Well, and yeah, so I do a little bit of detection and kind of translation and deciphering of those tweets, right? The one that Jonathan did, I would have rewritten it about the same way that he did, right? So that was a recent one too. You think it, yeah. But no, I mean, you see that though, right? That something very American is to be able to tweet to Donald Trump, to tweet to Kanye West and everything else, and think that you are a person who can talk to and criticize these figures. So that's one thing I think Rand would have liked on today's scene, because that is it. We respect our public figures, but as equals. Americans reject, and Jonathan talked about this a little in his presentation, the whole idea of being born into a certain class or a certain caste or with a certain skin color, etc., that would limit where you could go with your life. Whereas Americans, she says, are not limited by those ideas, and Americans uniquely exhibit initiative, is the way that she put it explicitly. That an American, if they're at a workplace and they see a problem, they say, hey, I don't care what job title I have or how long I've been here or whatever. If I see the solution, I'm going to dive in and offer it and, you know, really just stick my neck out for the thing that's right, that's actually going to solve this problem. Whereas apparently, Rand observed, in European workplaces and British workplaces, people would more just stick to whatever their little job title is and try to not get into trouble, even if potentially if they looked at the problem that's in another department, they could solve it. Something else she observed, and this is really where I like to focus more. Americans, she said, believed in the potential for human happiness on this earth in this life. They embraced the pursuit of happiness. I mean, we have it in our founding document, but that they really did exhibit and live this attitude. And again, you might compare 1971 to now. You might compare, I've heard many stories about the sense of life at the turn of the 19th to 20th century versus today, that it was quite different. But this is maybe a temperature-taking exercise that you can do about the health of sense of life in America, a big one. To what extent do Americans believe that human beings are capable of pursuing happiness for themselves in this life on earth? Another way to put it, the Badger Clark poem, is the world something, the world for you, something that begins when you're born, and is the world something for you to win, to make your own world in which you can be happy? Europeans, she thought, believed in the idea of original sin, that somehow based on characteristics you were born with, there was something bad about you that made you unworthy of success and happiness in this earth, and Americans reject that. Americans also, she observed, and this is one of my favorite quotations from her, have a healthy attitude of defiance. She said, "Defiance, not obedience, is the American's answer to overwhelming authority." That is a uniquely American response. So as I listed all of those various attributes and characteristics, do you think she was on the right track?